It starts way before the gloves, before the diving saves, before the weight of entire seasons resting on your shoulders. You were 8, maybe 9. Your dad took you to watch the local team play, and while everyone else screamed at the forwards missing shots, you couldn't take your eyes off the keeper. The way he commanded his box like a general, the way he threw himself into danger while everyone else ran away from it, the way 21 other players could be having the worst game of their lives, but he could still be the hero. When that keeper made a diving save in the 89th minute to preserve a 1-0 victory, the entire stadium erupted, and you felt something electric shoot through your chest. You didn't understand the isolation, the pressure, the way mistakes echo differently when you're the last line of defense. But you knew this. While other kids wanted to score goals, you wanted to stop them. That felt special. That felt like power. That stuck with you. The next week, you begged your parents for gloves. Real goalkeeper gloves. Not the thin cotton things from the discount store. You wanted the thick, professional ones with the grip that made that satisfying thud when you caught the ball. Your mom thought it was a phase, like when you wanted to be a dinosaur paleontologist or a space shuttle pilot. Your dad was quietly proud that his kid wanted the hardest job on the field. You started practicing in the backyard, throwing a tennis ball against the garage door and diving to catch it. The concrete scraped your knees and elbows raw, but you didn't care. You were building something. You were becoming something. When your friends came over to play, you immediately claimed the goal. Let them fight over who got to be the striker. You knew where the real action was. At your first youth league practice, Coach Martinez put you in goal for scrimmage and you made 3 saves in a row. Nothing spectacular, just solid positioning and soft hands. But the way your teammates looked at you afterward felt different. They needed you. The feeling was intoxicating. While other kids rotated through positions, you stayed put. This was your territory. This was your calling. By age 10, you had a reputation. Not as the most athletic kid, not as the fastest or strongest, but as the one who would throw his body in front of anything. You developed a pregame ritual. Check the posts, test the crossbar, bounce on your toes 3 times. Your teammates started to notice. The coaches started to notice. Your parents started driving to away games 2 hours each way because their kid was the starting keeper. You weren't flashy. You weren't the kid who made impossible saves look easy. You were the one who made the routine saves look routine, and in youth soccer, that made you invaluable. You studied the game differently than everyone else. While other kids watched highlight reels of Messi's goals, you watched Buffon's positioning. You understood angles and momentum and the psychology of penalty kicks before you understood algebra. The moment you knew this was your thing came during a tournament when you were 11. It was raining, the field was muddy, and your team was losing 2-1 with 5 minutes left. Their striker broke through one-on-one, and for a split second, everything went silent. Not the crowd, not the coaches screaming instructions, not your teammates desperately chasing back to help. Just you and him and the ball and the goal you were sworn to protect. He shot low to your left and you dove, not thinking about the mud or the pain or the possibility of failure. You just reacted. The ball hit your gloves and stayed there. Clean save, game over, season continued. The moment you decided this was your only path came during a conversation with your guidance counselor about backup plans, academic scholarships, other career paths, what you'd study if soccer didn't work out. You looked at her like she'd suggested you learn to breathe underwater. This wasn't a hobby that might not work out. This was your identity. This was your future. You hadn't spent 6 years becoming the best goalkeeper in the district to have a backup plan. You were going to play Division I soccer, then maybe try out for professional teams, maybe make it to MLS, maybe even get a look from the national team. The dream felt not just possible, but inevitable. Then one day it happens. You're 3 games into your freshman season at state, and the starting goalkeeper tears his ACL during practice. Coach Williams pulls you aside after training and says the words you've been waiting to hear since you were 8 years old. You're starting Saturday against ranked conference opponent, and for a second you think, this is it. You call your parents, text your high school coach, post something carefully humble on social media. You're starting for a Division 1 program. You're 19 years old, and your dream is happening exactly on schedule. Saturday comes, and you play the game of your life. 6 saves, including 2 that make the highlight reel. Your team wins 2-1, and you're the reason. The local sports reporter interviews you after the game. Your parents drive 4 hours to watch and take pictures with you afterward. The upperclassmen who barely acknowledged you before start treating you like you belong. You feel like you've crossed some invisible threshold from pretender to legitimate player. But weeks pass, then months. The starter's knee heals ahead of schedule. He's back in practice, looking sharp, and suddenly you're watching from the bench again. No follow-up articles, no more interviews, just silence. You thought that one game was your audition for the starting job. Instead, it was just a temporary fix. You're back to being the backup, the insurance policy, the guy who gets meaningful minutes only when someone else gets hurt. You start over. Again. Except now you're competing against someone who's been in the program for 3 years, who knows the system, who has relationships with coaches you're still trying to impress. You're not the guaranteed starter anymore. You're not the highly recruited talent. You're just another player fighting for minutes, and the gap between you and the starting job feels wider than it did in high school. The worst part is how quickly the attention disappeared. One week you're the hero who saved the season. The next week, you're holding pads during practice, while the real starter prepares for the next game. Your parents still ask about playing time, but now there's a note of concern in their voices. Your high school coach stops texting you game updates. The local reporter who interviewed you after your big game doesn't return your calls when you want to talk about the team's season. You realize you weren't promoted to starter. You were just filling in. And when you're no longer needed, you become invisible again. The dream isn't happening on schedule. It's not happening at all. You're just surviving, hoping for another injury, another chance, another moment where you can prove you belong. But you're starting to understand that belonging isn't guaranteed just because you want it badly enough. By sophomore year, you're still the backup. The starter is a senior now, which means you'll finally get your shot next season. You hold on to that. You train harder, study more film, work with the goalkeeper coach on every technical detail. You're going to be ready. You're going to be so ready that when your moment comes, you'll seize it and never let go. Except during summer training, the coaches announce they've signed a highly recruited junior college transfer. A keeper who was conference player of the year at his previous school. A keeper who's already better than you and has 2 years of eligibility left. Your moment isn't coming next season. It might not come at all. You're not just the backup anymore. You're the third string keeper on a team that only dresses 2 goalkeepers for games. That's when it stopped being fun and became survival. You're not chasing your dream anymore. You're fighting to stay relevant, to maintain your scholarship, to prove you deserve to be here. The game you fell in love with has become a source of daily anxiety. Every practice is an evaluation. Every drill is a test you might fail. Every save is proof you belong. Every goal you allow is evidence you don't. You're not playing soccer anymore. You're defending your right to play soccer. You don't remember when it stopped being fun. Somewhere between watching the transfer student start every game your junior year and realizing you'd graduate having never been the full-time starter at a Division 1 program, you understood you weren't chasing your childhood dream anymore. You were surviving. Your scholarship got reduced after sophomore year. Not eliminated, but cut from partial to almost nothing. The coaches said it was about budget constraints, but you knew it was about production. You weren't producing. You were just existing in the program, taking up space, getting just enough playing time to justify keeping you around, but not enough to build a real resume. Your parents started talking about student loans and part-time jobs, and whether you should consider transferring to a smaller school where you might actually play. But transferring meant admitting defeat. It meant accepting that you weren't good enough for Division 1 soccer. It meant starting over at a Division 2 or 3 program, where the coaching wasn't as good, where the facilities weren't as nice, where the dream of playing professionally after college was even more unrealistic. You were trapped between a program that didn't want you and a future that felt like failure. Your body started breaking down in ways you didn't expect. Not from dramatic injuries, but from the accumulated punishment of diving into concrete, hard ground for 8 years. From the repetitive stress of throwing yourself at balls kicked by players who were bigger and stronger than you. From the constant tension of knowing that one mistake could end your career. Your knees ached after practice. Your shoulders popped when you lifted your arms above your head. Your back seized up after particularly intense training sessions. The goalkeeper coach suggested you see a sports medicine doctor. The doctor suggested you take a break from diving drills. The assistant coach suggested you might want to consider other positions. Everyone was suggesting you acknowledge that your body wasn't built for this level of punishment. But acknowledging that meant acknowledging that everything you'd worked for was pointless. You started lying to your parents about playing time. When they asked why you weren't starting, you told them the coaches were rotating players, that you were being saved for conference games, that your time was coming. The truth was that you'd become a practice player, someone who helped the starters prepare for games but who rarely saw meaningful minutes. You were a professional bench warmer, and everyone knew it except your parents. Your friends from high school were graduating, starting careers, getting engaged, moving on with their lives. You were still chasing a dream that had become a nightmare. When they asked about your soccer career, you gave them the same lies you gave your parents. When they stopped asking, you realized they'd figured out the truth. You weren't a college soccer player. You were a college student who happened to be on the soccer team. The sunk cost fallacy kept you trapped. You'd invested 10 years of your life in becoming a goalkeeper. You'd sacrificed relationships, academic opportunities, other interests, all for this moment that never came. Walking away meant admitting that those sacrifices were for nothing. It meant accepting that you'd wasted the most important years of your life pursuing something you were never going to achieve. But staying meant continuing to sacrifice for a dream that was already dead. It meant spending your senior year watching other players live the life you'd imagined for yourself. It meant graduating with a degree in sports management because you'd been so focused on soccer that you'd never developed other interests. It meant facing the reality that your identity was built around something you were never actually good at. Watching others succeed while you stagnated was the worst part. The transfer student who took your spot got drafted by an MLS team. The starter from your freshman year signed a contract with a USL team. Even some of the younger players who'd been recruited after you were getting looks from professional scouts. You'd been in the program longer than any of them, worked harder than most of them, but you were the one going nowhere. The slow death of your original passion was almost imperceptible. You still loved making saves, still felt the rush of stopping a penalty kick, still enjoyed the technical aspects of the position. But the context had changed. You weren't playing for the joy of it anymore. You were playing to justify your existence in the program, to prove you belonged, to avoid the humiliation of being cut. The game that had once been your escape had become your prison. And that's why it sucks to be a goalkeeper, because even if you walk away, something always stays in that 6-yard box. You thought there'd be a moment when it all made sense, when the years of sacrifice would crystallize into something meaningful. Instead, there's this. You're 25, working a job that has nothing to do with soccer, living in a city where nobody knows you used to be a college athlete, and you still dream about making saves. Your knees hurt when it rains. Your shoulders crack when you reach for things on high shelves. Your back seizes up when you sleep wrong. Your body is a museum of injuries sustained in pursuit of a dream that never materialized. You're not old enough to feel this broken, but you're too broken to pretend you're still young. The identity crisis is the worst part. For 17 years, you were a goalkeeper. It wasn't just what you did, it was who you were. When people asked about your hobbies, your interests, your plans for the future, the answer was always soccer. Now when people ask what you do for fun, you pause. You're not sure. You've been so focused on one thing for so long that you never developed a personality outside of it. You're not a goalkeeper anymore. But You don't know who you are instead. You still follow soccer obsessively. You watch MLS games and Premier League matches and World Cup qualifiers, but now you're watching as an outsider. You see goalkeepers make routine saves that you made 1,000 times in practice, and you think about how different your life might have been if you'd been 6 inches taller, or faster, or more aggressive, or just luckier. You see players who are clearly less skilled than you were making it to professional levels, and you feel something between envy and rage. Your parents still ask about your soccer career sometimes, carefully, like they're inquiring about a deceased relative. They supported you through everything, spent thousands of dollars on training and equipment and travel, rearranged their schedules around your games for 15 years. They want to know if you ever think about coaching, about staying involved with the game somehow. You tell them maybe, but you know you won't. Being around soccer without being able to play it feels like torture. You still hope, despite knowing better. You tell yourself you could walk onto a semi-professional team, that you could get back in shape, that you could prove everyone wrong. You drive past the local adult league games and think about stopping, about asking if they need a goalkeeper. But you never do. You're afraid of discovering that you're not even good enough for that level anymore, that your skills have atrophied beyond repair, that the dream is truly dead. The permanent damage isn't just physical, it's psychological. You can't watch a soccer game without analyzing the goalkeeper's positioning, without critiquing his distribution, without imagining yourself in his place. You can't throw a ball with your kids without automatically assuming the goalkeeper's stance. You can't see a goal without mentally measuring the angles, checking the post placement, imagining where you'd position yourself for a free kick. You're haunted by the question of what it was all for. The sacrifices, the injuries, the years of dedication, the dreams deferred, the relationships lost, the opportunities missed. What was the point of becoming excellent at something that didn't matter? What was the point of developing a skill that has no practical application in the real world? What was the point of organizing your entire life around a game that forgot about you the moment you stopped playing? The childhood dream has become a lifetime prison. You can't escape what you used to be. You can't forget what you almost achieved. You can't stop wondering what might have been if you'd been just a little bit better, just a little bit luckier, just a little bit more. You thought being a goalkeeper would make you special. Instead, it made you a prisoner of your own ambition, trapped forever in the 6-yard box of your imagination, diving for saves that will never come, protecting a goal that doesn't exist, waiting for a game that ended years ago. And the worst part is that somewhere, in some parallel universe, you made it. You were the starter, you got drafted, you played professionally, you achieved the dream. But in this universe, you're just another person who used to play soccer, carrying the weight of what could have been, wondering if the 8-year-old who fell in love with making saves would have chosen differently if he'd known how this story would end.